You've got a great story idea, but you don't know what actually happens in it. I mean, you tried. You filled about 20 pages until you well ran dry, and is that enough for a novel? No? Hi, I'm Katrin, and I'm here to solve your plotting problems. And if you're wondering what is she doing with her hands throughout the video, well, I've got ADHD. I don't know what to do with my hands. So if you're watching a couple of my videos already, you might notice I'm fidgeting with something and now I'm crocheting. Nobody needs to watch me trying to awkwardly decide what to do with my hands throughout a half an hour video, so really it's best for everyone involved. But anyway, if you haven't yet run out of all your storytelling problems and writing problems, do subscribe to Protagonist's Crafts. I promise this is a channel about writing novels, not about crochet. I get it. Sometimes the story ideas we get aren't actual story ideas. They're ideas that might have some potential, but there's no story there. There is zero plot. You might get an idea that's something like, oh, I need to write about single people who are friends and they're living in New York and they try to navigate adult life and the dating scene. But again, a fun idea, but where's the plot? What actually happens? When I get a story idea, it's very rarely anything that could be used for the plot. So, for example, I've got this pet idea that I want to write like a cozy urban fantasy novel that's like Stars Hollow, but with supernatural creatures. And it's like something that I dream of writing, like for fun, because it's very different from what I want to professionally write. But I keep thinking maybe I'll write this novel and I will self-publish it under a cool pen name or something. Haven't acted on it because they still haven't added hours to the day. It's still only 24. I don't know if you know this. But again, that is just a random idea that I've been like just having in my head and just imagining it. But like there's no plot there. So I very much understand when you have like a very cool idea. But then where is the plot? You're going to need a plot. Where is it? Well, I'm going to help with that. The lighting situation is going to be all over the place in this video. I apologize. But please buy my stuff so I've got money to buy a proper field light, okay? And I know there are some people who will say, well, just start writing, just start. And it's like, cool if that works for you. That's just a recipe for writer's block. And for discouragement, because you'll be thinking that you need to be able to do this. You've got an idea, you should be able to write a full novel based on this idea. And then you start thinking that, maybe you're not made to be a writer after all. So that could be a very terrible tactic for your writing. And really think of the editing process, because editing a full novel, it's gruesome business. So you don't want to make it more difficult for yourself by writing this very sprawling, random, a bit nonsensical story that you need to sort of rein into like a cohesive novel. So doing all that stuff is a lot easier when the story kind of like makes sense, and you might just be able to get the result by planning in advance. And there are many writers who resist the idea of outlining or any kind of planning. But what you need to ask yourself is that actually working for you? So if it isn't working, perhaps it's time to try something different. So if you haven't been planning your stories and you keep starting these stories that don't go anywhere and never actually finish writing anything, then I just wholeheartedly recommend that you start planning your stories. Please do yourself a favor. So what is that thing that your story is actually about? Because stories, they need to be about one thing. And yes, there is a lot of stuff that's happening there, but there's the one major thing that everything sort of revolves around. There needs to be like one trajectory that takes place there. And I can't remember where I read it because I read a lot of craft books. But someone said that the beginning of your story should ask a question and then the end should answer it. So do you know what the question is? And maybe you don't need to know straight away what the answer is, but when you've got the question that your story is asking in the beginning, then you can start answering it and you just know which way, or where you're at least where you're starting from if you don't know where you're going. And John Truby in The Anatomy of Story, great book by the way, says that there should be a moral question at the heart of every story, and then every character has a slightly different way of answering it. So, for example, maybe the moral question in your story is, Is it okay to do absolutely anything to protect your family? So maybe your protagonist is like, you can do almost anything except murder people. And then there might be another character there who's like, yes, murder is fine if it's protecting your family. So that is just one way of trying to figure out, like, what is the thing that your story is about? What is the load-bearing wall of your story? And those moral questions, they aren't just for like these types of like moralizing stories, don't sleep around or you will get gonorrhea and then you will die. Because in everyday life, we all deal with like what is right and wrong. And we make all kinds of decisions every day, or at least we think we do. Sometimes the decisions have been made for us, or we just made one decision in the past, and then we keep doing the same thing over and over again. But anyway, this isn't what this video is about. This isn't like a Tony Robbins seminar. I'm sorry. Okay. You're getting this information for free. You're welcome. I can give you a pep talk, but it's going to be a little different. So when you think of The Secret History, for example, there's certainly, my cat is trying to get in, but I need to let him in. They're definitely like teetering on the line between right and wrong a lot of the time, and, well, mostly falling to the wrong side. But maybe the moral question in that story is it okay to do anything to preserve your friend group? Is the pursuit of like academia, can it go above everything else, even the law? So they weren't hiding like Bunny's death and the first victim's death because they were bad people doing bad things. They thought that they were doing the right thing. They thought that there was something more important than being like, oh, well, we did a crime, now we need to confess to the crime and go to the police. And then what is Richard's take on this question specifically? Because we know, we've seen him, he doesn't have like friends, his family doesn't care about him. So when he's been accepted into this very mysterious friend group, then yes, we can understand that he doesn't have anything else and he might just do anything to protect them. And we don't need to agree with this person. I know that you and we would do things differently. But because the story has been set up the right way, we understand why this person is doing these decisions, even if we don't like personally agree with them. And humans are always doing dumb stuff. Okay, humans are so stupid. I can say that I'm a human as well. And your characters, they should be stupider, but there should always be a reason why they're doing the wrong thing. But anyway, that's a subject for a different video. I should talk about character flaws at some other points. But yeah, anyway, let's get back to what we were talking about. So that might not help you with figuring out your plot, but it's going to give you clarity about what actually belongs in your story, and it's going to give you substance for the story. And did I mention clarity? You need to understand your story, or otherwise it's going to be very difficult to get it out of your head and onto the paper. Paper? Why did I pronounce it like that? Paper. Onto the screen. So again, think of what is your story about? What is the one thing? Like, think of the solar system, okay? It is the solar system. It's not the Earth system. So there are all these cool planets, like the Earth. This one is my favorite. But we're orbiting the sun. And we are there, all the other planets are there too, and all the other crap that's, in space. But it's going around the sun. So what is the sun in your story? Well, let's think about Yellowface. What is that story about? Not touching like the deeper themes about race and stuff, but like essentially the story is about June's, was it June? Yes, June's success with and regardless of the manuscript that she stole from her dead frenemy. And yes, she does also deal with like her family problems and with social media, her relationship to social media. But the story isn't about those things, but those things, they revolve around the whole manuscript thing and her like sudden author success. I know people's lives, they are complicated. We are more than just one thing. But you are writing a story, okay? And that means that you need to be more focused. All right. So what is the one thing? And if you've never thought about this before, then you're welcome, I guess. But it's like, you can probably not understand why it's been sort of like difficult to actually turn your story ideas into a story. It would be like a bit like trying to crochet without a crochet hook, But to get back to your actual plot, what you're going to need is a protagonist and a big problem. And yes, sometimes the big problem is actually a big opportunity, but it's still somehow causing, chaos and mayhem in this person's life and changing everything. And yes, change, that there is extremely important for any kinds of stories. The right kind of problem, and yes, I'm talking about the main conflict, it needs to make that particular character's life difficult somehow. So it needs to be tailor-made to your protagonist, or your protagonist needs to be tailor-made to your problem. And the problem needs to change things in a significant way. And your character can't just walk away from this problem. And not just you, but also we, the readers, we need to know why they can't just walk away. Otherwise, we'll be like, well, so what? Who cares? Just go home. Go on. And you also need to think about personal stakes and public stakes. And stakes mean that what does the character have to lose if this problem doesn't get solved? So when you've got like a very big, like a global scale problem, like the end of the world, why should we care? That is far too general of a problem for your readers to actually connect to your story. And I think you'll find, if you've been watching like disaster films, there's usually like one person that we follow, that we care about. Like in The Day After Tomorrow, like we're following Jake Gyllenhaal's character, and we already care about him because we've been like watching him for a while. But also, he's got a crush on this girl. Okay, so if he dies, if they both die, well then he can't ever like kiss her, or whatever. I can't remember every detail in that movie. Maybe they do kiss, but they can't have their happily ever after if they die. But also, the character's dad is coming after him. So, like, we already feel for this person. We know what he has to lose if he doesn't make it, so we care. But then sometimes you have much smaller problems in your story, much more personal, and you might want to think of, like, how you could connect them to a bigger picture. So, for example, if a character loses their job, like, if they're lazy, then, it's a bit difficult to connect that to like a bigger issue. But if they lose their job because of the depression, or like not their depression, but the depression, the economic thing kerfuffle, then it's a lot easier to sort of like connect that to bigger themes, and then to be like, oh yes, this is not just this person's personal problem, but it's a bigger problem. Or you could think of like what kind of consequences does it have for their community, for example, for their town or for their country. So your character should always want something, and in the beginning of the story, they might have some kind of life goals, or as is usual with, humans, we want things just to remain the same. We don't want to change. But then comes this big problem, and it changes everything, and it threatens their existence or their peaceful living or something. So they end up with a new goal. But this goal, it can't be, they just want to be happy. This character, her ultimate goal is happiness. Before she wanted happiness, and now she again wants happiness. Boring. Not specific enough. We all want to be happy. So that can't be your character's goal. You need to get specific. So what does happiness, what does it look like for this particular character? For example, when I think about myself, I'm quite happy like doing my little crafts, reading books, writing, having my little treats, going for little walks, seeing birds and stuff. But for other people, it might be like they need to go scuba diving and skydiving and some other kind of diving to be happy. So what does happiness look like for your character? And how do we know that they're there or not there? And when they have got their new goal, they come up with some kind of a plan on how to get there, or they have some kind of an idea of what needs to happen, what they need to do in order to solve the problem and get to the other side of it. But they're going to be misguided, and they're going to make mistakes because they haven't changed yet as a character. And your story's job is to change this character into the person who can solve the problem. Okay. It's kind of like magic or chemistry, you choose. So essentially, people are stupid. Okay. Always remember this when you're plotting. So you've got a character who's being hated. with a big problem, and then they come up with some kind of a plan on how to solve this problem. But because this is a flawed character, they're going to make mistakes. They're also going to have existing problems that stem from their past somehow. Other characters will also be sort of like, I don't know what I was doing there, putting their spanners in this character's works, or just one communal spanner into their works, trying to stop them. And then there's their environment and, the story world that is also causing problems and hindering them somehow. And when you've got enough events in your story, it changes your character into the person who can solve the big problem, like we talked about. And what you need to remember is that the solution is never what it seems like in the beginning. Your character can't see the solution yet. And it's even better if your readers can't, if they don't know yet or can't figure out first what the right solution should be. And this quote has been attributed to Albert Einstein. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So that is very helpful for you for creating your plot. Again, this is starting to sound like some kind of a self-help seminar. But I promise, we're not talking about self-help here or self-improvement. We're not talking about crochet. We are talking about plotting our novels. By the way, if you find this video helpful at all, please go and lightly tap the like button. I've made some kind of a mistake here. I don't know why I keep doing this, because I keep making mistakes when I'm not watching the thing properly. So anyway, you definitely should look into story structure more. I'm going to link my very helpful blog post in the description. But structurally speaking, shut the fuck up. In the first half of your story, your protagonist should be largely reacting to the problem, so they're trying to get back on their feet. And then sometime around the midpoint, where something important happens, they're going to start being more proactive, but they will still be trying to solve their problem the wrong way because they haven't entirely changed as a character first. They're not seeing the truth quite yet. And in the third quarter of your story, things will be getting really dark. You might have heard of the term dark night of the soul, so that's where it goes. And that's where this character's mistakes are catching up to them, the mistakes that they did because of their flaws or for some other reasons. Again, they still have their flaws and they still haven't let go of them. There's something that they need to let go, but they haven't done that, and it's got consequences, and it's really bad. They need to hit the rock bottom before they can come up with the right solution. Don't be shy there, okay? Let them suffer. Look what I found. I don't think he likes. Anyway, you should watch all of my videos and see how many cats can you see there. So if you had your listening ears on, you noticed that I mentioned flaws. And flaws aren't there just to make the character more interesting or more realistic. They have a purpose for the plot as well. And I created this really cool method called the Troublemaker Method that helps use your character's flaws to create your plot. So you should definitely check that out. I've got hair stuck on my face. Oh, there it goes. Thank you. And it even comes with a cool spreadsheet that helps you map out your story step by step. Because like I said, I understand our story ideas, you don't necessarily get plot ideas. So it's very difficult to start writing when you don't know what happens. And one time I had this very cool idea for a story. It was more like a backstory, a mystery. But there was nothing really happening like on the surface of the story. The main character was mainly just passively waiting for information. That does not make up for an interesting story. So I created this method for myself to figure out what should actually happen in that story. So yeah, it's tried and tested. Please check it out. So anyway, you've got this flawed character who's being hit with this big problem. So how exactly does this help with plotting? So first of all, how would this specific person decide to proceed when they got this problem? Thinking of like what they're like as a person, where they're living, what their background is, stuff. And why do they hesitate at first? Because it is a big problem or a big opportunity. So they might not just like run into it head on. They'll be like, oh no, can I do this? Should I do this? Should I just die? So Why do they hesitate? How do they hesitate? It doesn't have to take long. It kind of has to be there. And then when they're finally like, okay, I have no option. I need to deal with this. How are they in a new world? So it could be like an actual different physical location. Maybe they go on a journey, or like maybe they just move. But something needs to have changed, even if it's like their way of seeing the world. Like maybe they found out that they're actually a bird and not a human. Or maybe they got a new boss, an annoying new neighbor, something. And like I mentioned earlier, they need to be reacting to this problem. So how are they reacting? And how are they trying to get back on their feet? And usually at this part of the story, they'll be learning new things and learning new skills. And if you get a plot twist coming up, you need to start planting the seeds here. By the way, let me know if you'd like a video about plot twists as well. And again, remember, your character, they need to be doing things the wrong way. So how are they trying to solve this problem? Wrong. Characters who are too savvy and too self-aware, they don't do shit for your plot. So you need to make sure that they don't have their stuff together. They don't have all the answers, and they definitely shouldn't be completely self-aware, like they've been to therapy for 5 years. Okay, if they have, then you need to fire them. You need a different protagonist, or just make them stupider. All right, don't be shy at making them stupid. But again, like give them reasons for being stupid. So don't make them just do mistakes for the heck of it, or because you know that they need to make mistakes. Give them flaws and other factors that are going to affect on how they approach the world that we, the readers, can actually see on the page. And don't let them proceed like, okay, I've got a problem, I know how to solve it, and then phew, they go and do it. They need to be going like 1 step forwards and 2 steps back. And again, their flaws will be contributing to what happens there. Other characters, environment, consequences of previous events, all this adds up to your story. And then in the midpoint of your story, there needs to be something big. So often it is some kind of a revelation. Talking about plot twists again, there's usually like 2 good places for plot twists. The first place is at the like a 50%, and the second place is at around like 75% or after it. But the thing with midpoints is there's often like new information being found, something that is changing everything, or that could be some kind of a big event, or like a literal event. It could be a party, If you're watching a movie and there's a party somewhere in the middle, go and check out, like, is it the actual midpoint? Are you in the exact middle of the story? Anyway, and then sometimes in the middle, there could be some kind of a false victory. So they think that they've been doing things the right way, and they're like, okay, yes, we solved this problem now. But then you're reading the book or watching the movie and like, there's still about half left. That can't have been the solution. Or sometimes they fail and they think that they've failed for good, but actually there's going to be an even worse failure coming up. So yay. And as for new information, it could be something like the characters being stuck underground in this bunker, and they're like, okay, I need to get out. I need to make my way out. And then around the halfway, they do get out, but they realize we're not on Earth. We're actually on the moon. How the am I going to get home from the moon? And when you understand this kind of stuff, then you won't have like a saggy middle, and you won't have like a story that you're rushing through to get to the exciting points. Actually, that's something else that I need to make its own video about. But your story can't have boring parts that you don't want to write, because then nobody wants to read those boring parts either, and you're utilizing your story wrong. But anyway, so after the midpoint, they will be somehow changing tactics. They will be more proactive. Things will be getting more dark. I often don't like this part in movies. When there's a lot of action and things get dark, I don't like it. It's too tense. I am too sensitive. But that is still what you should be doing. And this character, they are still stubbornly doing things the wrong way. They might already have some kind of an inkling that something needs to change, but they're not quite ready yet before they hit the rock bottom. So what happens that makes them see things the right way finally? And often something that they end up doing here is some kind of a sacrifice. So they might sacrifice themselves somehow, sacrifice a person, but at the very least, they need to sacrifice maybe some kind of a belief that they've been stubbornly clinging to, some kind of a dream, some kind of expectations for example, so something needs to go. Perhaps somebody needs to die, but it can be like a more metaphorical death. It could be the death of the person that they thought they were. And what did they learn earlier? What happened earlier that made them have the right skills or the right information? And again, which events, what kind of events changed your character into the person who can finally solve this big problem for good? And it can be helpful to work backwards from the solution, like going to the beginning, instead of like starting from the beginning and then wondering, how do I get to the end? The most important thing I want you to remember here is that a story is a change-making machine that uses problems to change a character, usually for the better. So when you build that machine, you've got a plot. Congratulations. And throughout this whole thing, you need to remember cause and effect. You need to remember the inner logic of your story. And you, as the writer, are responsible for that logic. So anything could happen in your story as long as you make it make sense. Plot holes happen when something happens in your story that doesn't work with what we already know about the story's world, or about the characters. If there's something missing, add it to your story. Add the setup that is missing. And if you have setups that don't have payoffs, then either take them out or add the payoffs. Make sure that all loaded guns in your story are shot, and that all the shots in your story come from loaded guns. That's basically it. There's a lot that I could say about plotting stories, and I will one day, but hopefully this will get you started. Now stop watching my videos and go write something.